Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to today's second bonus. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They all were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. His audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into tonight's second bonus upload, shall we? All right, everybody. Today I have a subscriber who took some time out of his day to share some stuff that he has witnessed out in the wilds of America. Tom, how are you?
I am doing good. Hang on. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
okay.
I can hear you great.
Sorry. Doing good. And yeah, doing good.
Well, thank you for taking some time out of your day to come on the channel and share some of the stuff you've seen out in the wilds. So, as you know, I don't direct my shows. I just give the floor to you, and you control it at your pace. So that's what I'm going to do.
Okay. I appreciate that, Jeff. I will get a little specific. This was in this did happen well, it started in Wyoming. And I don't want to get into specific into the town, but anyways, I lived in this place for a while, and working out there, and one of my friends who was one of my good hunting buddies, he had some tracking dogs that we did mountain lion and bear hunting with, and he guided people and stuff, and we'd go out there, and a lot of times we'd just get on track more often than not we'd tree a cat, and of course if it's a female, she's not take pictures of it if it's a young male or whatever. Mostly just we would take pictures, and I believe I did get one mountain lion that way. But anyway, so in this community, everybody knows everybody. So then it came to where the Game and Fish would contact him if there was, which was to happen quite a bit in the winter times. The older, usually it was mountain lions. So, an older cat, when it starts can't hunt anymore, losing a lot of teeth, they come in and start preying on pets.
Right. So,
and then they need to be removed. So my buddy would, and some of the times I would go with him, and, we'd get this call out, and always it was at night. And, we'd get the cat, it'd run up on top of the house or something to get away from the dogs, and we'd dispatch it. One time there was a bear, and, of course, same thing, got the bear in, I think you got him in behind a shopping center, and we're able to dispatch it. And it was an old bear. And then plus, a lot of people think, wintertime, a bear's going to be hibernating. Not true. They don't always hibernate. The farther south you go in latitudes, bears don't always, if the winters aren't that bad, they're not going to hibernate.
Right.
And plus, even up north, sometimes bears will come out of hibernation in the wintertime. If they didn't, if they get hungry or something, it's not uncommon. So anyways, and there was times when he was out of town that Game and Fish would contact me and say, hey, we got this over here. And I'd go get the dogs. The dogs, they knew me very well. There's two dogs. There's some kind of hound dogs. I'm not real technical on dog breed names, but something that was, I guess, pretty common for doing that type of work. Well, one night, and remember, it was cold, so it was either winter or, hey, I got somebody at the door. Can we pause this for a second?
Yep.
Okay. So anyways, I think this was around late winter, early spring. It was still really cold up in that part of the country and windy. I remember it was windy as heck that night. But anyways, really can't even remember about what time it was at night, but I know it was dark. And get a call from Game and Fish, and they said they had a bear. And it was he said they had two bears, and it was down south of this town. I can't even remember how many miles it was. It was over 20 or 30 miles. You cross the border into Utah, and there was another town that was on the Utah side. So that was where we were headed. So on the way there, because when he came by, he said that that there was two bears. And backing it up a little bit, one of the times whenever we had to dispatch a mountain lion, I always used a 22, and it was easy to get a clean, easy shot on him, and it was quiet because it was in town. And anyways, he said don't bring that damn 22. And he said it's two bears, and I'm thinking, that's odd. Bears, first I was like, two. Oh, that just doesn't happen. If it's a sow with cubs, they cubs from the year before, and usually they're separated by then. So I just thought, anyways, I didn't give it much other than I remember saying that. I thought, that's weird. But anyways, he said, don't bring that damn 22. I said, all right. And the only other gun I had was my 300 Win Mag. So I grabbed that and the, box of ammo, load up the dogs in the back of the Game and Fish truck, and we're headed south out of town. And on the way, there was a lot of conversation on the radio with him and dispatch, and then dispatch giving directions on. So who we usually would meet up with was, the local municipality, the local police, That wasn't uncommon, so I kind of just didn't pay it much mind, other than it seemed like I remember he was getting a little agitated. I couldn't remember what it was about. But then, so we get down there, and he was in contact with whoever, with whoever the local police was there, and getting directions on where we were to go. So and what it was, there was an alleyway with a fence that ran along it, and I think on one side of the alleyway was the backside of like a little shopping center, and then there's a fence, and there's this alleyway, and then on the other side of the other fence were some houses, and I think maybe they were like mobile homes. Anyways, but there were houses there. And so in that alleyway, so on one end of the alleyway, which I think the alleyway was about 150 yards long, I could be wrong on that, and the police were on one side. I saw two vehicles there, and they had their spotlights out. I'm like, what? Just anyways. So then we pulled in on the other side of the alleyway, and then another car pulled in behind us. And I remember what I thought was kind of weird about this. I was like, why is the county sheriff deputy from where we just came from clear down here? We're in Utah, But anyways, there they were. So I thought, well, they're bears. Sometimes take all precautions necessary, because even a 150-pound bear can do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So I get that. So anyways, then, so I didn't unload the dogs yet, because it was, I wasn't instructed to. I didn't know what their game plan was. And I started where we stopped there, and they would shine a spotlight in the alleyway. There was like a dugout but it was where there was a dumpster in where the fence was like set back like a rectangle area that like it sets back about 6 feet and then across 10 feet and then back out, so the dumpster could sit in that fence groove without blocking the alleyway. You follow me?
Yep.
Okay. So anyways, when he's talking on the radio with somebody, and the other thing is too, on radios for some reason, even when I'm carrying a radio at work, I have a hard time hearing people. They just muffled stuff is just, it never has come clear to me to understand that well. But it was the gist of it that I was getting was like that by this time he was instructed to wait, and he was like, we came all the way down here. Why are we waiting? But, and then and I looked over and I saw the sheriff deputy that came in behind us was leaned over the hood of his car with a rifle. And just about every law enforcement, municipality that carries a bolt action rifle is usually going to be a 308 Remington Model 700. And that's what I figured this probably was. So he leaned over it with the rifle, just sitting there looking through the scope. And then I heard a commotion by that dumpster. I'm like, oh, well, I kind of figured that's where the bears was. That confirmed it. But I thought something didn't sound right. There was a couple of really big thumps. I mean, thumps that I was standing on the ground, and from where we were to where the dumpster was probably it was a little over 50 yards, maybe 75 at the most. But I felt those thumps in my feet. And I mean, it wasn't just like, oh, did you feel that? No, it was like, holy crap. I didn't even have to ask if everybody else felt it. So the Game and Fish and the sheriff deputy, let me be more specific. The sheriff deputy was probably maybe 30 feet from his front bumper to the back bumper of the truck where we were. And then the Game and Fish, who I was with, turned and shined his spotlight on that dumpster. And all hell broke loose. And I mean, it went berserk. And I didn't get a good look at what was going on there, but I could see next to the bumper, I saw black. I definitely saw hair, fur hair, whatever. And when it did that, he immediately shut the light off. And I don't know if it was because he noticed that it caused a reaction or what, but he immediately shut the light off. And then I remember him asking me again. He said something about you didn't bring that damn 22. And I'm like, I was clear about that, from the get-go. But anyways, the local municipality, this is what I did get out of the radio. They said dispatch. They said dispatch it. They said dispatch them now. And I think that was because of the explosive reaction from the light. So I had my gun out. I'm leaning across the back of the truck. I have 2 dogs in the back of the truck that I could smell. They peed all over the place. And the truck was shaking like hell. And I don't think the dogs were shaking the truck. I think Game and Fish was shaking the truck. And I said, quit shaking the damn truck. So I had a 3-9 scope on the rifle, and it was not a very high quality scope. But so from the ambient light, from the lights from the municipality on the other end of the alley, there, of course, it cast a shadow in where these 2 things were between the dumpster and the fence on the side of the opposite end of the alley. So they were in there, but they were on the shadowed side. So it was hard to discern what. I still at this time didn't like. That's a big fucking bear. I mean, that's got to be a big fucking bear. And I saw black, and I mean jet black and fur, and which is another thing. Most of the bears up there are usually a brown phase. It's not very common to get a black one, but it really didn't hurt me that much. But so anyways, that municipality, and I think it was the county sheriff on that side of the, on the Utah side, and they were saying to dispatch it. So I was just waiting I figured the deputy that came up behind us was going to do it. At this point, I'm like, he's got his rifle out. I got mine out. Well, then the Game and Fish called out to him, and he didn't say anything. And then it dawned on me that the angle he was at, they were more behind the dumpster. So I'm kind of looking at him at almost not quite a 45-degree angle, but at an angle to where I could see between the dumpster and that side of the fence. So I'm looking in my scope, and I'm trying to find a body part. You got to, especially in an urban environment, like you don't want a bad shot. You got to dispatch it quick. So I'm still thinking bear. I'm looking through my scope trying to find a body part, and I see the lid is up on the dumpster. I could see kind of a black mass back there. For one, it almost looked like initially to me, I thought something was crawling out of the dumpster, because I see this blackness going over the side of the dumpster on that side but it was sitting there. I couldn't tell if it was moving or not. I didn't know what that was. And I'm going, is that another bear in the dumpster? It's just still not, I'm still on that. This has got to be a bear,
Right.
So starting to discern the movement here, and okay, there are two there, but I couldn't tell where one ended and the other one began. So we asked the whatever municipality on the other end of the alley if they had another spotlight that they could get higher up to show some more light on it. So they turned on another light. I think by this time there was 3 cars down at that other end. And then Jeff was still, Game and Fish was still bantering back and forth with whoever, his dispatch or whatever. And it sounded like it was an argument now. But anyway, so when he called out to the deputy, if he could dispatch him, I still, up until this point, hadn't heard that deputy didn't introduce himself and nothing. He didn't say, he hadn't said a word, but then Game and Fish calls out to him, and I could see from where we were that he probably didn't have a good shot, because the dumpster was blocking them way more. But then the deputy answers back, but his talking was like, the only thing what I could equate it to or relate it to, I guess, was, when you jump in some really cold water and it takes your breath away and you're like, huh? The way your breath, that's the way it sounded like he was talking.
Almost like a frantic kind of thing, huh?
And he couldn't talk. Yeah. It was like, are you hyperventilating? In hindsight, he was, and my heart went out to the guy. But I got to catch my breath on this for a second.
Take your time.
Okay. So, okay. So, I cranked the scope up. It was a 3-9 scope, and I cranked it up a little bit more, and that's where I could see that there was 2 of these for sure. And one of them, I don't know if one was a male or one was a female. One was way bigger. And at first I'm thinking, with that black mass back there, they're both equal size. No, they weren't. But, the smaller one was crouched down. The best I could see was crouched down, and I could see at one point it looked like, and here's where I knew they weren't bears, was because I could see it almost looked like a snake-like movement. I could see this thing stretching out on the ground, reaching around the dumpster, and I'm thinking, what the heck am I looking at? And then I could see on the end of it was a hand.
Wow. And
another arm came out, and it was another hand, and it was I think it was the bottom one trying to crawl out. So I'm starting to, as it like reaches up out a little bit, one behind it. The one behind it, I think the one behind it was hitting it. You could hear the hits. You ever like, played as kids and you punch your friend in the back and you hear that thunk, the hollow thunk.
Right.
You multiply that by about like, I don't know what, but it was hitting it. And then I heard it hit the ground again. Something was hitting the ground. So I don't know what was hitting the ground, but you could feel the vibration. But the way this one repositioned, and I know this probably wasn't the way it was sitting, but to me, it looked like it was kind of sitting like you'd almost sit Indian style, but I know it wasn't. But it was at this time, that was when I finally saw what I knew to be, that was a face. And that was where it was jet black too. And it was being as dark as it was hard to make. I could see a face and I could see what the face was, but details too much. I know there was, it definitely wasn't a person, but it wasn't a bear.
Right.
There was almost no hair on it because I could see the shine in the, from the ambient light. I saw a glisten of shine on the skin that was still black. I mean, it was black. There was no, beige. It was black. And as I'm looking at it through the scope, there was, and I don't know if it were the reflect. It was, I saw the eyes just, and I just, hopefully it was just reflection, but I saw both eyes ding, and it was definitely looking right at me. And so I shot that. And I wished I hadn't. At that point, I wished I wasn't even there. I wished I wasn't even on this planet.
Right.
That's when I saw, and it went, it was that either shot through one of the eyes or like right close to the eyes. It was there was no doubt that was a good part, but that was at that point, I didn't have remorse. I was scared shitless.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to be born at that time. But then we're committed. And Game and Fish called out to the sheriff deputy again, and he wasn't doing anything. But when all this went down, then the one that was behind it stood partially up. And as it was standing up, there wasn't another one in the dumpster. There was a hand. It was its hand on that dumpster that had a hold of the edge of the dumpster with one hand, which was for, and it's thrashing around. It picked that dumpster up and slammed it on the ground like it was a plastic waste basket.
Wow. Do you need to take a minute? Do you want me to pause to take a minute?
No, I'm okay. I got this.
Just let me know if you want to. It's not a big deal, my friend.
I appreciate it. I think once I get through this last part, I'll be okay with this. But so, anyways, as it stood up, it started standing up, and that was a privacy fence, and that thing it didn't even stand all the way up, so I can't. But if it had, it would have been twice the height of that fence. It was however big those dumpsters are. Its width of its shoulders was probably 2/3 the width of those dumpsters with two lids that flip up.
Yeah.
And so it's partway standing up. It was making, before all this, before everything went to shit, it was, you could hear some noises but to me, it wasn't like you didn't hear. It was, there was some growling, that's for sure. But so where I grew up on the near the Navajo Indian Reservation, I know a lot of Navajo and Navajo friends, and there are a lot of their enunciation in their words. There's a lot of, yep. And that's what some of that was reminding me of, was whatever the noise this was making was, it had a lot of the click and like tongue drag with it. That's what it was, which I guess it definitely wasn't comforting. But anyways, when it stood up or started coming up and looked right in our direction, and that's where I think if I had had dinner, I would have had bigger problems. And I'm being dead serious. So when it did that, there was, I guess I got a lot more calmness in me, because I was focused on, this is what needs to be done now. Because I'll explain more. Maybe it's not relevant later on, but so, I'm going to put a little more detail into this also, because I've heard on other discussions on different podcasts on people saying they can't be killed.
Okay.
If anything bleeds, it can die. You can die.
Right.
And so at the time, I knew what Bigfoot was, but this wasn't what I ever saw. And all I knew was like the Patterson Gimlin film and the Leonard Nimoy In Search Of, when they, to me, that's not this. There was no head crest. Right. It was jet black. The one behind it, as it was making its fit, it looked like it would slink its head down to where it almost looked like the head come out of the chest, to where the shoulders were higher than the top of the head. And no, it wasn't a coned head. It was a round head. And so as it stood up, it arched its, I don't know, it lit. I think they can move their heads in a lot more of a range of motion than people realize, I guess. I don't know. This is what I saw. The head come up a bit, but I still couldn't see a neck. But I could see with the ambient light that this is where I made out the face on this one. And I'm assuming that the other one probably looked a lot like it. But it definitely a human face, but it reminded me of the jaw on this thing. This jaw could smash concrete. If you threw this thing a freaking brick, it looked like it could just pulverize that brick to nothing, to dust. The jaw on it was so massive and out of proportion for this thing's head. It was so, and I could see it definitely, the face stuck out a bit toward, more than a human does, of course. And it did have a nose. There was a nose, but it wasn't like a huge nose that stuck out or anything. I remember there was a nose there that didn't look unordinary for what a person's nose would look like. But this thing did not look, it had there was a human look to it, but it was like, this is not right. Definitely not right.
Right.
But that jaw was just, I would say, the width, just the chin alone, from the bottom lip to the bottom of the chin, I don't even think put my hand over it would cover the whole, that distance. It was huge. It almost kind of looked like the way it jutted out even more past I don't know why I get so fixated on this, but it was just, that was one of the main things I noticed about it. I didn't notice ears, anything else, and then the massiveness of it. But anyways, when we get back to the moment at hand, then I took another shot. Oh, and so I used a 300 Win Mag, and I remember there was this hardware store that had their sporting goods downstairs in the basement, and I remember finding boxes of these 220 grain silver tips. And I think they probably performed like shit because it was kind of a round nose, but I like the look of them. I was always buying them whenever I could find them. So I remember those were the loads that I had there. And a 220 grain bullet, that's a lot of beef, for a 30 cal in a, generally I shoot 180s in it. But anyways, I hit the 220 grain. So I could see in the chest, the musculature was just, it was impressive. So and I've shot bears before your best is going to be a sideways double lung shot. Okay. And people say, oh, don't shoot him, coming straight at you. Well, you can if you're careful about it. Well, he's angled towards me. So I aimed for the part of the chest where I thought the bullet would come out, because if you got an angled shot, you always shoot to try to break the far shoulder. And as massive as he was, I didn't think I was going to get it through to the far shoulder, because I put the crosshairs somewhere around the sternum, or just a little bit to the right side of the sternum on that thing. I say I don't know. I didn't see any genitalia or anything. Right. But anyways, I'm just a generalization. Anyway, so I shot and I put it just a little bit to the side of that sternum. I didn't think the bullet was going to go all the way through because as big as this thing was. But when I did, I saw his left arm fly up, and the way it flew, I could tell that was the bullet exiting and hitting his arm, exiting through his armpit. And then but before I even took that shot, it seemed like everything went into slow motion. I get another one in. It's a bolt action rifle. It's, they're not slow, but it's not as fast as semi-auto, of course, for your follow-up. So I get another shot in it, or I get another one chambered, and I was going to shoot in the same spot, but I saw him lean forward a little bit more, and I could see through the ambient light. He let out a huge breath. He went, whoa. And in that breath, I saw a bunch of blood come out of his mouth, which told me that, all right, his lungs are filling up with blood. So when he leaned forward, then I shot him right in the side of the head. And then it was like he just went straight down, and that was it. And then, so I had to sit down. If my legs were shaking during that time, I don't think they were. I didn't notice it, but right then they were. And I broke down. And to be honest with you, I wasn't the only one that did. And it's fucked up. Well, come to find out, the deputy and I didn't go over and talk to him, but Game and Fish was talking to him, and I saw him come back to the truck, get something out of his toolbox, and he took a blanket over to him. So I think the deputy had, messed himself. And so by this time and this is where I started getting the gist of it, was whoever Game and Fish was arguing with his dispatch. They were getting orders from another agency, and I want to say like BLM. I'll say I used BLM, Bureau of Land Management, as for a generalization. It's the Forestry Department, the Department of the Interior. Right. It seems like they're all kind of interwoven. I think it was one of those that was telling them, I guess they were basically essentially telling us to don't dispatch it. They're coming. Well, their first concern is safety of the public. And I'm assuming here, because of what little bit I got from Game and Fish on the conversation, was that they're like, no, we have to ensure the safety of the public. This, dispatch. So that's what we did. And then, so on that, then Game and Fish is on the, he's on the radio with dispatch, and then he was like, he was in a hurry to go. He's like, let's go ahead and go. Let's go ahead and go. Well, I come to find out that through all the shit happens later on, that the local municipality, the guy that was behind us, the agency that was supposedly that was going to be handling this, which they're coming from Salt Lake City apparently, which 2-hour drive away, if you're really breaking the speed limit, right. It might be worse. But anyways,
not to cut you off, but just so we can kind of, this company or agency said, don't dispatch, we're on our way. They expected you guys to hold this thing in that area for a couple of hours before dispatching it. Because is that what you're saying?
As we were leaving, I saw a helicopter coming in.
No shit. Okay. So
where the side we came in on, there was kind of a big open field on the access to the alleyway on that side.
Okay.
Hang on a second. I'm going to sneak.
Good.
So anyways, we're heading out of there. And I remember Game and Fish had asked the deputy if he wanted to ride back with us. And he said no. I think he followed us back. I don't know. But on the way back, they're calling us to come back. And we're like, I looked at him and I said, exactly what I said. I said, fuck you, brother. I'm jumping out right now. I'm not going back. And he just said, I don't blame you. And he said he responded something that it was something like, hey, it's not an option. We got there's something that I can't remember what it was. He was good with the term that he used, and they rebutted once, and then that was it. But so then I got home and I didn't sleep. I take the dogs back. I never told my friend who owned the dogs but I kind of thought, like, dogs are in the truck. They weren't exposed to it. There was no way they could have gotten hurt, but
right.
Get the dogs back and they're, there was other dogs they had there but different. They weren't hunting dogs, some cattle dogs. And usually everybody's barking and jovial and stuff. And it was like, I opened up the portable kennels and just put them in a regular kennel, and they just went in and sat down and just looked at me, and there was no tail wagging, no nothing. And usually those are very vocal dogs.
Right.
But anyway, I'm like, yeah, sleep well.
Well, just from what you said, I mean, just because when you first were, aiming before a shot was even taken, you had said the dogs had urinated. So, I mean,
yeah.
They obviously knew something big or something intense was out there.
You could feel it in the air. Wow. It was, and that was another thing that I guess, reflecting on it in hindsight, I guess you're able to equate these things rather than, it's nothing. But,
right.
First, I'm like, it just seemed like there was a tension you could feel, and I don't know how else to describe it. I do also have to say that I don't know the history of these, but still up at that time, I didn't equate that with that being a Bigfoot. I was just, I didn't know what to think about him. It didn't, let me get into some more detail. The size of that hand. So I guess my only thing that I did, trust to be true at the time was the Patterson-Gimlin film. And even then it had been mildly stabilized, right. But you could still see the arms, legs, hands and feet, This thing's hands were, to me, it was out of proportion they were bigger than what it looked like, like if I walked in wearing a couple of baseball gloves. So when it had its hand on the side of the dumpster, that's what I thought that hand initially there was another bear in the dumpster. And that just, and as big as that thing was, I really, and still even at the time, I was, always into powerlifting and bodybuilding. So I'm 6 foot, I think at the time I was a good lean 235. I'm fat now. That thing could have, I think one of those hands, it could have picked me up by my torso one-handed, palmed me like a basketball. That's what just shook me to the core so much was the size. It was easily in the range of the 10 to 12 foot high range, if, in my opinion. That's what I don't think there was anything for him to be in there. I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe there was some logs in there that he was standing on. I don't think so. When I saw the massiveness of it, here's the other thing too. I guess I've got to interject. I think a lot of times when people say, they judge all this thing probably 350 pounds. I disagree. Have you ever picked up a bulldog?
Yeah, they're heavy.
That little dog. You pick up that little dog, you're like, holy shit! How does this little thing weigh so much?
Yeah.
Well,
solid.
things their muscle density is a lot tighter. Yeah. The fibers are a lot more packed together. A gorilla that's 5.5 tall is, a full-grown one, mature male, is going to go 400 to 500 pounds. That's not even taller than us. So one of the things I kept pondering was how much this thing had to have been well over 2,000 pounds.
Holy shit.
Well over. And that's going by the mass, the height, when I saw that arm fly up, that's where I really got, I saw the hand, because when that arm flew up, on the first shot, and it hit I don't think it went through. I think that was it for that bullet when it hit its arm. But that arm went up and then almost like straight out. And that's when I saw that hand flip up. And that's where I really got a good view of like, the fuck is this thing? What is this? What is this? And then I guess, I don't know, it probably wasn't until these last couple of years that I finally thought, that's got to be what those things were. So what else was, the hair on both of them was just jet black. So, but when I did get the first shot on that one, you could see how the sparseness of the hair on the front of this one was, where you could actually see skin through the hair. But the rest of the hair, it almost was like, so it wasn't really that long on the top of the head, but it seemed like where it got to where the neck would be, like the bottom of wherever the ear line would be. On this one, the big one, it got long and flowing, almost like, I don't want to say not big like a lion mane, but it was like longer around there, and then seemed like as it went down the arms, and it went back to being shorter hair. But I don't know. I guess that was part of another part of why I didn't know what the hell this shit was, because it didn't look like, the Leonard Nimoy, the monsters, the Patterson footage. It didn't look like that. Not saying that that's not a real thing. I believe that footage is absolutely real.
Right.
But that anyway, so I don't know if they had problems with these coming into town before. I don't know what the history of it was, and I'm thinking, for one, I wish they hadn't called me.
Yeah.
Two, was that necessary? I don't know. I'm not a tree hugger by any means. I am an avid hunter, but I have a lot of respect for everything out there, except for coyotes. I hate those things. But I mean, everything else is like, what's necessary? I'm going to eat this. So there's a predators. I want to thin a predator down. So you got, good, healthy, deer elk population, so, but at this point, so I don't know. They knew, they knew, the local municipality, whoever that was, whether it was a sheriff or they actually had it was an actual police department. They knew. They were the ones that made the call. And I guess the thing that kind of like put me at ease a little bit was that they were the first ones to say, yeah, go ahead and dispatch them both. You'd hear that. So they're the ones that got to live there. Yeah. They're the ones that have to keep their people safe. So who am I to second guess their judgment? I'm not going to do it.
Right.
You know, so, but anyways, I think it was the next day. Oh, especially if you live in a small town, buy a police scanner.
Yeah.
And listen to that thing. And we had already had one. We hadn't been in that town very long, but we knew we were new guys in a small town. It was me and a friend of mine. And so we bought a police scanner, and sure enough, it was like every once in a while you'd hear the cops would actually say, drive by our house and say, yeah, both vehicles are in the driveway. Like, why they were, checking up on us, I don't know. But it did stop once we got to know Game and Fish. So, right. It's small town, I guess you got to know who's.
And this was after that.
Well, no, this was before. So I'd already had the police scanner. But then, that's why I was really surprised, because I was home. God, why was I home from where I might have gotten laid off at the time? So I was home, and I did, and Jeff, the Game and Fish, comes by, and I thought, shit. Usually I'd hear, on the radio or about something. So I thought, wow, he just showed up. Anyways, he said, hey, we need to, what was the word? It wasn't confiscate, but he said, I need the rifle that I shot with. And I said, what for? And he said, for their full investigation. They just, they got to ensure that, that the rifle matched up with their ballistic stuff. And I'm like, okay, but I said, am I going to get the rifle back? And when he looked away and he said, oh, probably. I knew that bullshit. When you turn in a gun for something, it's almost impossible to get the thing back.
Right.
So pulled a dick move and gave him my girlfriend's gun. Which was a 243. But I mean, I left it in the case and handed it to him. And I mean, we were broke up, but she still hadn't come back for a gun. So I'm like, yeah, here, take this. So then I think it was about 3 days later, Game and Fish comes back by and he says, hey, we need to take a ride. And I said, I am not going back down there. And he said, no. He said, we need to go give statements at the office in Salt Lake. And I said, well, I don't have anything to say about it. I said, why don't they come up here? And he goes, he said, it doesn't work that way. I said, well, what if I don't go? Because I was fixing to leave town, I think the next day, to go to New Mexico for a little job. And he said, look, if you don't, he said, they'll subpoena you in. And he said, I don't want to go more than you do, but he said, we got to go down there together. I said, you got to give a statement? He said, no, you do. I said, well, why do you have to take me down there? It's not that I didn't trust him. I'm just kind of like trying to get information, because we didn't talk about anything on the way back, really, that night. That was almost 2 hour drive back, or about hour and a half drive back. It was really windy road. Anyways, so I said, all right, we'll go down. And on the way down, I started asking him, like, dude, what the fuck? What? He said, I don't know. And he said, the less questions we ask, the faster it'll be through this. And I'm like, okay, what about them? They get to ask questions. And he said, I don't know. He said, they know they want to get a statement, and they fingerprinted me. And the one thing I was worried about was the guy kept pressing me about that was the gun that I used. And I go, yeah, he goes pretty evasive. I said, yeah, I said, it was at night. I grabbed the gun out of the closet, and I said, I'm pretty sure that's one I used. So I don't know. They had to have recovered a bullet if I would think, so they would know. There's a big difference between a 243 and a 300 Win Mag.
Yeah.
So,
It is.
but didn't make a huge issue out of that. But the one issue was my it was, they didn't call it this, but essentially it was a non-disclosure agreement. And it was to, not discuss this. But as I recall, there was a time frame on it though. But I don't remember what that time frame was. But it wasn't a pleasant interview because it was, he was asking me the details and stuff and a lot of what I just explained here on, but what I got out of it was I think Game and Fish was also in hot water for bringing a civilian into this. So it'd be like, the North Hollywood shootout. If, the SWAT team brings in a civilian to say, hey, take that guy out for us. I think, kind of on that lines.
Right.
Initially, though, it was what Game and Fish was, because he was grilled on this a little bit to try to, when they were asking me, like, why were you there? What, And he said, because we were told this was something different. And he rattles out the protocol for, wildlife coming into town. Dangerous wildlife coming into town, raccoons and stuff or whatever, trap them, mountain lions and bears, which is not uncommon. This is their protocol. If Game and Fish doesn't have the resources and the dogs to do it, if dogs are needed, then, then they have somebody that's I don't know how to put the term, rapport with them. So my buddy had already had the rapport with them for like a year or two. Through, probably, to be all honest with you, from the first time I went out, I would call it a ride along with them on this, was probably maybe only about 6 or 8 weeks before that.
Wow. And
then anyway, but one of the other things was, who owned the dogs? What are and Game and Fish had, they interjected, like, the dogs stayed in the back of the truck. They never got out. That's really not pertinent. So they did kind of drop that. But so I remember I signed that. They fingerprinted me. I still never got the gun back. And then going back, I tried to bring it up again with the Game and Fish guy, and he said, look, your non-disclosure agreement, he said, that covers between you and I too. And he was like, really? That's the first time he kind of got shitty with me, which told me that they were leaning on him too.
Right.
That wasn't his nature, I thought, So I didn't bring it up anymore. But then I can't remember how much longer after that I was coming home from something one night. I was probably out drinking. And I pulled into the gas station to get something on, before I went home. And that same sheriff deputy from that night pulls in behind me and lights me up in the parking lot, not even on the street. I'm in the parking lot at the gas station. Lights me up, asks for my license and everything. I tried to make small talk with him, but the night it was just like, he looked at me like he'd never seen me before in his life. Wow. And writes me a ticket because he said my license was suspended. I'm like, for what? My license isn't suspended. I still had a out-of-state license, and I had out-of-state plates on my truck still. But I'm like, my license isn't suspended. So I think the next day I called Arizona DMV. Yeah, your license suspended, unpaid seatbelt ticket. I said, seatbelt ticket from where? And they said, Wyoming. And I'm like, I've never gotten a ticket in Wyoming. So I'm just like, what the hell's going on here? So I go to court to fight this. So first you go into court. I pled not guilty, and I was like, I wasn't, So then I have to go to court for your, to defend it or whatever. And I said, if my license was supposedly suspended, I said, I want to see the the ticket that it was suspended for, well, that's when I get educated on the legal system that, no, you should have asked for that before. This isn't the time, that was, so you got to prove anyway. So basically I had to eat it. It was a $500 fine. So I didn't pay it. And I think about closer on towards summertime, I had a job offer in Phoenix. So I'm like, yeah, I'm moving. I'm out of here. So I left, and then it wasn't until 2005 or I think 2005 I went to renew my driver's license, and I'd renewed it multiple times since then. In 2005, they said, "Ah, man, Wyoming's got a hold on your license." I'm like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. Wow.
No fucking way.
Trumped up charges and holding your license years later. That's messed up.
That's fucked up. Well, it was come to find out it was because I didn't pay that fine. So I'm like, all right. So I kind of I blew it off. I didn't blow it off. It was just like, shit, I got to go up there and I got to go back up to that county. So anyways, I was doing some work up in North Dakota. And then when the job was over, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to swing on down to that courthouse and go pay this. So I went to go pay that in 2011, walked into that same courthouse, and it was just, I had goosebumps, and went up to the clerk and, told her my name, my driver's license number. I said, I got an old fine I need to pay you guys. And she pulled it out and she goes, huh? I said, what? She goes, we just released this last week. You don't have to pay it. She goes, you can still pay if you want. I said, nope. But I said, I want something in writing that it's freaking released, which I did get.
Yeah.
And left out of there, still shaking my head like, what the hell? So I don't know if that was just like maybe there was a display of, look, I don't know, maybe we can reach you, we can make your life tough. I don't know. I don't know if I don't know. But
display of power, what they had, if you because you said you had to sign a non-disclosure, right, or something like a non-disclosure. Yeah. So
yeah, but yeah, it was I don't like I said, this all came about in '94, so I maybe it was called that. I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was a shut your mouth agreement with stipulations in there on how it was. A class level, whatever level class felony or whatever, if you do talk. And I'm like, wow, holy shit. Because I tried asking the guy, like, what was this? What was all this? And he said, we're not here. That's not what we're here to discuss. And basically it was like, we're here to discuss your conduct. And like, what the fuck did I do, man?
Right.
And so anyways, it was, kind of add insult to injury, that was dramatic enough, and then to get that bullshit backed on top of it was like, really, you guys?
Yeah, that's intense. I mean, you're kind of brought into something, not even, of your own. It's not even your field, pretty much, and then you get the shit end of the stick on that one completely.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was always kind of wondering, like, man, why didn't Game and Fish shoot it? And then later on thinking, you know what? I've never seen anything but just a sidearm on his hip. I've never seen they have any kind of a long arm rack in his truck or anything. So I don't know if it was kind of like I don't know, Mayberry type thing, the Game and Fish just didn't normally carry a long arm. Most of the law enforcement agencies, you either see like the AR type of weapon or
they always have a long rifle with them or some sort of shotgun or on top of the sidearm.
And I think that was a shotgun, unless you're getting it down that thing's mouth at the size of that one.
Right.
I don't care what kind of slugs you had. I don't think you could have got the penetration, even with these Reineke Black Magics. I wouldn't have. I mean, if I had one, I would have used it, but I wouldn't have felt that wouldn't have been my first choice for sure. But I think he would have, like I said, had it shoved down its mouth for it to, be that effective, or I don't know. like I said, I mean, anything, if it bleeds, you can kill it, you know, but I don't know. 22 definitely, you know, and
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when you
yeah,
when you
don't
said
bring,
you aimed up on that thing, and I was like, it's a good thing you didn't bring that 22.
I wouldn't have squeezed off with that. I would have probably ran. But I'm pretty sure that deputy had, you know, I'm pretty sure it was a 308 that he had, because it was, you know, I do remember seeing it. I remember seeing it was kind of a bull barrel, looked like the typical, you know, I guess like a SWAT sniper, you know, what for that time period. I think they're a lot more technical for that time period. I think they're a lot more technical now, especially with the, you know, some of the big, you know, like the North Hollywood shootout, stuff like that. I think they've, you know, gotten up with the times a bit more.
Militarized, you know, even Mayberry cops have some pretty high tech firearms,
full body armor and everything, right? Yeah. So that was it, and I just I don't know. It's, I guess maybe with, I don't know. That's about most of the details that I can think of. And if you have any other questions later on, just, you know, like, hey, well, did you see any of this or what? You know, man, feel free to ask me, because
yeah, absolutely. I mean,
some of this stuff has kind of jogged my memory.
Well, like you said, 94 is a long time ago, you know, and I truly feel like I could feel your pain. You know, I mean.
So it was, I guess it's just, I don't know, anxious, or it feels good to kind of let it out, but I still, I appreciate this bit of anonymity, so to speak, because of, you know, this definitely the community this Bigfoot community is pretty vicious, and I don't want to be subjected to any of that crap. I like my blissfulness, you know.
Absolutely.
People that go out looking for them, I can't say that I haven't. I've gone out, I guess, you know, and I have a few times with my buddies. Just, I'm cool with, you know, if I hear them, which we have heard them, but I don't ever want to see one again. No way. No effing way. I wouldn't want to see another one again as much as I'd want to see a horrific car accident.
Right.
It's right up there with me. I don't want to see that again ever.
Now, if you don't mind me asking, when you were describing the moments prior to and up into the time you took the shot just now, you were very emotional. Were you emotional at that point? Was it because you kind of realized that it wasn't a bear, there was possibly some sort of humanistic characters, or something that just kind of resembled a monster? I mean, you know, it's not a bear, it's not a human, it's what the hell is it? At one time you think it kind of resembled its head coming out of its chest because it was so friggin' big. You realize its hands are big. You know, you said the deputy had pissed himself, so obviously you were, you know,
it was, my emotional came from, I was terrified more than I ever thought was possible. And I'll put a little bit more backstory in here, and I don't know where it comes from, but there was something when I was a kid. So I'm 54 years old. I will be soon. When I was a kid, I remember the first time I saw the Patterson-Gimlin film. It was on TV. I think it was In Search of or whatever.
Yeah,
I remember
watching Nimoy. I remember when I first saw it, it was Leonard Nimoy, In Search of.
Yeah, and I remember watching that, and you knew that you're looking at something that is truly real. And I remember asking my dad. I guess there was a part of me that wanted to be real. I said, "Dad, is that real?" And my dad said, "Yeah." He said, "It is," and it scared the shit out of me. I mean, it literally scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And we lived in Southern California at the time, and then it was just so kind of always in the back of my mind that, you know, we have all these beasts on the earth, and we can handle all of them. But what about that? What about that? So then when we moved to Arizona, then where we lived, I remember we were way out in the boonies. We had cattle and stuff, and remember my bedroom window. My bed was like right next to my bedroom window, and I was just always scared shitless of something walking past my window. Right. I don't know why. Nothing ever had, But then, with things be here, and we always at that time it was, they're, according to what everybody would say, was they're relegated to the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We're a long ways from that, but I always thought, you know what? How come they could walk down here?
Easily. Yeah.
Why don't they? So there's a good chance. So it would just get my mind going. So I'd get scared. Not scared, terrified, because I even got into in my, my early teens, some of my getaway was, everybody's home life sucks now, to me, mine really sucked, but my getaway was my chores are done. I'm going camping. I taught myself how to camp and backpack, and I bought gear and stuff. And, my only defense at 12 years old, I had a 22 caliber pellet gun. But I wasn't too worried. I thought, okay, there's a big thing out here that get me maybe a mountain lion or a bobcat. By that time, I've seen enough that those things, they don't want it. They'll get away from you. I wasn't really worried about them. So then, I get to, in my interests, I'm trying to, every once in a while, if I could find a book at the library about Bigfoot, and it was still very limited, but I also learned a lot more about hunting and stuff. And so when my parents allowed me to, when I was 15, I was able to buy my deer hunting rifle. I bought a 30-06. So the reason being was, some of the other guys, one of my dad's friends, well, get a 243, it's a good deer rifle. And I'm thinking, I always thought in the back of my head, yeah, no, what if there's a Bigfoot? I was like 30-06 would fucking take care of it. And I never told anybody that. But that's why my first gun was a 30-06. So then in Minnesota, I was working in Minnesota in 2014, doing some anomaly digs, and we came in this area, and there was some cattle in there. We basically were digging up these parts of the right of way to test pipeline that had a bad call out reading, or a marginal call out reading. So dig it up, expose it, and test it with ultrasound. But we get into this spot one morning, and there's cattle in there, but there's no houses around. It's out in the woods, in a big right of way cutout. We get in there, and immediately I smell this smell. And that's what I'll put in that whole thing on that night back in '94. I don't remember any smell. So I don't know if maybe there was a breeze going the other direction or what. I didn't hear a smell. So if anybody's wondering about that, no, I didn't.
Right.
But in Minnesota, I got this smell that was just so putrid. And it reminded me of before that whole thing happened in '94, I used to live down in the Virgin Islands in the early '90s. And people down there are lazy. And so one day there was a local market, like a supermarket, had caught on fire, and it had a meat market too. Well, after they get the fire put out, then the building's destroyed, so we're not going to do anything with it. So they let all that meat in the meat department just go rancid, and it stunk the neighborhood up so bad you could not even imagine. But I didn't care as long as they didn't have to clean it up. They're like, so anyways, that rancid smell was kind of part of what I was smelling that morning, and mixed with I don't know what else. But I'm like, oh, what the heck? But after a little while, and our equipment started pulling in, smell went away. So I get everybody going. I was the lead inspector on this, and once we got the pipe exposed, then I grabbed my camera and I went for a walk around through the woods next to the right of way, and I found these oak trees that strips of bark were peeled off, and they were peeled off about 2 inches wide, and they had they were peeled off enough, and they were long peels, but as they would peel them, it would curl them, kind of like, wrapping paper ribbon.
Right.
And looking at it, and they were moist on the inside. So when you peel the bark off, this was coming out it was bringing some pulp with it, a little bit of pulp on the inside of that bark. Well, it was all chewed on, and you could see where something was like just gnawing on it, all the full strip of it, gnawing on all the pulp. And then it looked like when they're done with it, they just, laid it over this branch. I got like 3 of those big strips. They were still wet. And the branch was so high, I had to use my tape measure to reach up to. I couldn't even jump high enough to pull them off. So who knows what it was, but this was when, I didn't know who to call, but I thought, we got wet saliva on here. There's DNA.
Right. So
I got a hold of the BF, and I'm not going to continue to give them any more airspace, but got a hold of them, and they had their local researcher calls me, and I told them what I had, and it was just, well, okay, I'm down here in such and such, and you need to bring this down here. I said, well, I'm working 7 days a week. Can you come up and get them? And the response was, well, you don't understand. Just like chewing me out like I'm not doing something right. And I just hung up on him. I said, fine. You guys, screw it.
It's almost like laziness on their end, like they
do. And it could be just, there's, anyways, it kind of, so I thought, well, you know what? I've got my answers anyways. I don't need to be going to you guys for anything anyways. So, and it's just, so that's just kind of where everything is kind of lied since then. So,
well, I want to thank you for sharing this with me and everyone else.
Thank you.
I know that it's been a while. You and I had emailed a while back. And just throughout time, you were able to share it, and I appreciate it. And it's truly a very intense and emotional subject for you, and I thank you very much for.
Thanks for making the platform available. This is it. It's anyways. I just appreciate it. Without having this available, I know there's other avenues, but there's certain things that this just feel comfortable with. This was a good fit for me.
Good,
and I appreciate that greatly, because if without you doing this, I wouldn't have had that fit for me. And it's I don't know. I could have gone the rest of my life without putting it out there, but it kind of, I don't know, with what everybody else has gone through, some of this shit needs to get out there. Regardless of how I feel about it, it did need to get out there. So
yeah, because what you just shared with us, that emotion that you had, that might trigger someone else to get brave and come out and share and help them, because it's a healing process as well. I mean, it's a learning thing for people who have not had an encounter, but a healing process for others who have, to know that, hey, this guy saw the same thing I had or something similar, and he feels the same way I do, so, because it's, just like, I mean, I can relate to what one thing that you said, I've seen something, I didn't have to shoot, thank the Lord, but, you went to the library and you picked up any kind of book that you could find. Like I went to used bookstores and picked up any book that I could find on the subject after I had my encounter. And it was roughly the same time of, I had mine in 93, 94, somewhere around there.
Oh, wow.
And it was the summer of 93 going into 94, so right before school ended for me, before graduation, my last year of school. But there was no internet, there was no nothing, and all we could do is just look for books and some sort of something, and I can relate to you.
There's no validation to
Yeah,
You know,
nothing.
like crazy.
There was more books on UFOs than Bigfoot, and it was definitely crazy. So
and it's, I guess, yeah, the internet is a double-edged sword for sure. But there was, I couldn't tell anybody on two reasons. One, I'd be in trouble if I did, and two, the ridicule. I mean, there's some, just the ridicule of like, no, that doesn't happen. It's just, anyways. So I guess jail time isn't at my age. I think jail time it doesn't hurt as bad as ridicule sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's hard to. But anyways, it's for people that are out there looking, be careful what you wish for.
That's right.
That's right. There's some parts of it I think is neat. The hobby part of it, like I said, we've gone into a place to listen and it is neat. But in every the times that we have heard them, that I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. And
yeah.
My buddy's like, man, I want to see this, and I'm in my head, I'm going, oh, fuck you. No, you don't.
Yeah.
But I'm not anti-kill, but I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, if you have to, you have to, but I think just everything that comes with it. There's the legal side of it. If it goes to that point, or you don't know how many more are there,
Exactly.
The power this thing had, the one when it picked up that dumpster, like, what size dumpster I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly. I do. They're about, like, I don't know, 7 feet in the front, 7 feet by 10 feet, somewhere around there, and they're big.
Yeah. You got to throw stuff over into them.
Yeah.
It wasn't a roll off, but it was, a 2-lid dumpster. That's to smash it up and down like it did with just that hand out of, pissed offness, was like, that thing may have just been made out of wicker. It was just, my God, you're not even safe in your car.
No.
No. Anyway, it's just, so
well,
I guess
I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm coming up on time for the recording ability. Don't hang up, because I want to talk to you a little bit after.
Okay, yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to say to the audience listening before we end?
I think I pretty much covered it.
You definitely have, my friend. Definitely. Thank you again for coming on. I truly appreciate it. It took balls, man. It really did, and I appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.
And there you have it, folks. Tonight's second bonus. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. We are all simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These creatures exist. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about. It may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth. And God bless you all.